Hi everybody, welcome to the Candy Corn Quilt Shop, Quilt Along. This is a Kimberbell machine embroidery quilt. It was released in 2021. I looked at the date inside of the instructions. I just purchased this as a digital download. It was on Deal of the Week, I think about a month ago. Let's go through the schedule. The link to the free schedule is in the box below. We're starting today with our launch and our fabric prep, and then we'll be finishing it just before Halloween. I've divided up the entire quilt. We'll work on a few blocks every week, and near the end we're going to work on the borders and the stitch in the ditch and the binding and embellishments. Because this is an older quilt, there's no fabric kit, so today will be interesting. I'll show you how I prep my fabric when I don't have a fabric kit. I do have the embellishment kit for this, and I will be following the background quilting. Those were also on sale the same time as the digital download. If you go to page 3 of your instructions, all of the blocks are right here. What I like to do is use Ziploc bags. Here's all my bags. You'll see there's scribble and tape. This is the third quilt I'm making using the same set of bags. I'll use a different color marker and label my bags. So all my bags are ready to go. I've gathered some random fabric from my shelf. I've got black yardage for the borders. This purple is left over from the Fat Quarter Shop Boo Crew so long a few years ago. I have a nice little bit of yardage of this. I had a fat quarter bundle with Halloween colors. That's where these came from. And then I have a few fat quarters, I think 7, of the Kimberbell fabrics that are used in this quilt. That was on my shelf. That was lucky. I have some more random yardage and scraps Halloween fabrics. I've got a charm pack of this Haunted Hues. That's these right here. These are nice. And then I did have a Haunted Halloween charm pack. I took all my fabric outside, spray starched it, and pressed it. Everything's ready to go. Let's look at the fabric information. It always looks like a lot, and if you do all of this at once, it usually takes a day. At least takes me a day. This is on page 4. It shows pictures of the fabric, where you use the fabric, what section of the quilt, there's a diagram showing the quilt by section, and how many and what size cuts you need. Here's a close-up. So if you flip through it, like that's page 4, that's page 5, and then a little bit here on page 6, and then it goes through the embellishment kit. And you'll see there's cutting diagrams for your embellishments. And there's also cutting diagrams for your fabric. If you happen to have the fabric kit or you decide to kit it up according to the instructions, there's guides, here we go, on how to cut your fabric. You'll be needing this, and you want to follow this if you have the fabric kit. When you look at this, there's a picture of the fabric, and then it shows you how to cut your pieces so you get the most out of each piece of fabric. Right in front there's also a quilting design guide. You can see it's got numbers on the blocks if you're using the quilting bundle, and it gives you all the information, what's used where. But this you do as you go, so I glance at it, but I really don't use this. Since I don't have the fabric kit, it's going to be different. And something came up this week, and I'm posting this on Monday. I'm really pressed for time. I am not going to be able to cut all this. So we're going to cut this quilt on the fly as we go. The first blocks we're going to work on are MT bobbins, Alma scraps, rest in pieces, and broom parking. I'm going to cut those. That's all I'm going to cut right now. And as I work on each block, I'll go through my fabric pile, pick fabrics. If I've got the matching fabric, I'll pick it. If not, I'll pick something that I think is going to look good, and then I'll cut and prep each section as we go. Let's take a peek in our instructions. And this is where the coloring is all off. I ran out of some of the colors on my printer and didn't realize, and it was all printed out. So the empty bobbins, Alma scraps, and rest in pieces are the little comedic tombstones. If you look on the quilt, there's one here, one here, one here. This is better. I can see the colors. And then the next one I wanted to work on is the broom parking. I'm going to see if I have any of this matching fabric. Here's how I picked everything. I looked at the picture, and then I looked at the guide. I actually have this fabric. This is the Alma Scraps fabric. The one for the empty bobbins, it has a black with white cobweb. I have a white with black cobweb. That'll be fine. And the rest in pieces has a purple background. I have this purple stripe. I'm going to use that. And then all the little headstones, tombstones are made with a light gray. I've got light gray. I also need to pull for broom parking. Broom parking is right here. It has a striped background, and I do have this stripe, but unfortunately in a charm pack, so the piece isn't big enough. And then it has a purple for the background. Since I don't have a big enough piece of the stripe, I picked this polka dot. It's got the black and orange polka dot. And for the backing, the sign, it's a purple with a print. I don't have that fabric, but I have a nice purple. I'm going to use the solid. You can see it's got quite a bit of embroidery on it, and then it has this orange satin stitch, so a solid will look just fine. I'm going to start with my gray since it's used for 3 of the blocks. It's right here. We're on page 4, and it shows you empty bobbins, almost scraps, rest in pieces. And if you go across, 4.5 by 6.5, 4.5 by 6.5, 4.5 by 6.5. I need to cut 3. I like to use exact size rulers if I have them. This is a 6.5 inch square. The less I have to measure, the less chance I have of making an error. So we need 4.5 by 6.5. I have a 4.5 inch mark on this ruler, and I know the ruler is 6.5. I'm going to line it up like that, and I'll make 3 cuts. You could also cut a 6.5 inch strip if you're working with your own fabric. Use the fabric cutting diagrams if you've got the kit and you're following along. I just thought I'd show how I cut my fabric when I don't have the kit. I'm going to go ahead and cut 3 of these. I like to stay organized. I know I'll need this piece of fabric later. I'm going to fold it back up, and I'm going to put it back on the tray with the other fabrics. Here's my bags for those 3 blocks. I'm going to slide the fabric in right after it's cut, and I will do the fusible and cut batting after. I find it easier to get all the fabric sorted before I worry about which pieces need fusible and cutting the batting. Page 5 has the almost scraps background. I need to cut a 6.5 by 8.5 inch piece of my green. I'll need a bigger ruler for this. This is 6.5 inches wide. 1/2 inch marking is up here. Here's 8.5. I can line it up like this. Now I know I have 6.5 and 8.5. Page 4 has the MT bobbins background, 6.5 by 8.5, and I'll be using this fabric. I think it's wide enough. Let's have a look. How about that? It's just over 6.5. I lucked out there. I have a selvage here, so I want to line up my 8.5 inch mark on the selvage. Then I can cut the selvage off. Back on page 5, rest in pieces. It's going to be the same size, 6.5 by 8.5. This is the fabric that they have for the broom parking, the background, 6.5 by 8.5. I'll be using this, so I need a 6.5 by 8.5. You can see it's been used for other things. I have to figure out where the best place is for me to cut this. I wonder if that's 8.5 wide. Let's look. Nope. Okay, so we'll go 6.5, 8.5, 8.5, measuring right here because there's a selvage. And since this is my last piece of this fabric, I can tell this says L.E.Y. Blake Designs, so this is Riley Blake Designs. I'm going to keep that little piece of selvage with this. I don't think I can order this anymore. I can't remember who designed it. It might be a Lori Holt Halloween background or polka dot, but just in case I get to the end and I feel like I need more, I'll go ahead and save that selvage. Page 5 has the measurement for the sign. I need a 4 by 6. I'm using my solid purple. Grab that. I'm going to grab my smaller ruler and we'll measure out a 4 by 6. 6 and 4. I have the pinked edge, so I'm measuring a little bit over 4. Here are all my fabrics for next week's blocks. Let's look and see if anything needs fusible, and let's measure our batting. These instructions are a bit different. It's an older quilt. Usually right in front it tells you which ones need fusible. Here it's actually on page 10. It says, although not required, we recommend ironing, the word fusible is right there, you just can't see it, fusible to the wrong side of the background fabric before embroidery. I think what I'm going to do is look at each block as I go and make that decision. Let's have a look. Broom parking is right here. I've got my two fabrics. This is a dark fabric. I'm not worried about the other fabric showing through underneath, but it does have heavy stitching on it. It is starched. I'll probably put fusible on the back of it. This I definitely will. This is a little bit thinner, and even though it's starched, I can see my hand through it. I want to make sure this will hold up to the background quilting. For all of these, I will go ahead and put fusible on the back just in case. And checking my fabric here, this is good, it's thick, it's starched, but again, all of these are going to have a lot of stitching on them. I'm probably going to put fusible on everything we just cut just to be on the safe side. You don't necessarily have to do that. Also, something you can look at is your background fabric and then your applique fabric. Can you see through it? I can see the stripes through this, so I definitely want fusible on the back of that. And my guess is, yeah, you can see the cobwebs through the gray on that. And this has a green. You can see a little bit of a green hue. Personal preference though. I would definitely put it on the back of your background fabric since that's in the instructions. And then you can make the call on your applique fabric if you'd like to do that. For my fusible for this project, I'm going to use Pellon SF101. I'll put a link in the description box below. I do have Kimberbell fusible, but I don't have enough to complete this entire project. In case you've never worked with fusible before, here's one of the pieces. It has a shiny nubby side, you'll be able to feel it, and the smooth side. The shiny side is what needs to touch your fabric. When you're working with light fabrics, make sure you don't have anything caught between the fusible and the light fabric. Now it does tell you to use a damp pressing cloth and the wool setting and to fuse it for 10 to 15 seconds. I've never used a pressing cloth, to be honest with you. You can. You want to be careful. I can tell this is cut a little bit bigger than my fabric. This is going to fuse to my ironing board. I'm going to move it a little bit down this way. My ironing board is actually a big piece of board covered with 2 layers of batting and fabric. So when I get stuff like sticky and fusible, I do it all on one end of the ironing board. And when it gets too grungy, I replace the fabric. I've got my iron here. I just press it. It says 10 to 15 seconds. So you press and you wait. You don't rub it back and forth. And then you would do the next section. And then I do both sides. So I like to start with the back side. That way, since I don't use a pressing cloth like it says, and I'm doing this a little fast for camera, I can tell if it's going to stick. You see, I can tell it's sticking there. If I'm worried about getting my iron dirty, I want to cut that off or avoid it. My iron's already dirty, so I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to go ahead and press it again. You don't necessarily want to do that and get this stuff all over the bottom of your iron, because then it can come off on your fabric. I don't think I'm counting long enough. Make sure you count 10 to 15. Don't try to pick it up right away. It's really hot. Mine's been sitting for a little bit. It's fused. It's not peeling off. That piece is good to go. I will let the piece cool completely before I put it back inside the plastic bag. Let's talk about cutting our batting. The 3 little tombstone blocks will be trimmed to 4.5 by 6.5 when we're done. So I'm going to cut my batting at 5.5 by 7.5. That gives me the space I need for the batting tack down and then to trim the little bit extra. You never want to cut it to what you're trimming it to. It'll be too difficult to get everything centered correctly in the hoop. I like to add an inch. So I'm going to cut 3 pieces, 5.5 by 6.5. Broom parking also gets cut to 4.5 by 6.5. So I'll cut 4 pieces at 5.5 by 7.5. I like to cut the batting ahead of time and have it ready, and I'll put it in each bag. I save my scrap batting. This is Missouri Star batting. It's very similar in thickness and feel to the Kimberbell project batting. Since I have a cutoff from the bottom of a quilt, I've got a couple here, I'm using this. Here's my 4 batting pieces, 5.5 by 7.5. 1 is going to go in each bag. I have all my fabric set with the fusible on the back and my piece of batting. Everything is in each bag. Let's take a minute and talk about the thread colors for this project. Here's your thread colors on page 3. They're pretty vague. Normally with the newer projects, they give you an exact thread color name and number. They like to use glide thread. I'm going to pull my threads as we go, making sure that the color selected is going to match my fabric selection, since some of my fabrics are going to be different. I have this really cute fabric wrapped rope bowl. I have a video on how to make this on my channel. I pulled black. We're going to start with that. And then the rest of these I'll pull as we work through the project, and I'll keep them here in the bowl. I'm going to work with my Floriani threads for this project. I have a set of these threads. I got that when I purchased a multi-needle embroidery machine, so a lot of them are still in plastic. I'm going to keep my little thread key right there, and then as I go, I'll add my threads to it, and I can write the thread number on that if I want. All the little threads have a thread number. That way, in case I end up using a couple different greens, or maybe I use something else instead of the yellow, I can keep track of what I'm doing. Let's talk about how I keep everything organized. I have this funny little cardboard basket, Moose Munch. We got some Moose Munch for Christmas. This thing is great. This is the third or fourth project I've used this for. We've got our embellishment kit. Looks like something flew out of that. Oh, it is. It's open on the side. I'll slide that back in. And then I have all my bags that I didn't work on yet. I'm going to put them inside. I've got the first ones that are ready to go. I'm going to put that on top. I'm going to put my instructions, my schedule, and my thread. That way everything is together and I can move it when I'm ready to use it. Thank you for joining me today for the launch of the Candy Corn Quilt Shop Quilts Along. I'll be back on September 8th and we'll stitch through MT bobbins, alma scraps, rest in pieces, and broom parking. So you've got a while to get all your fabric and supplies together. The link for the schedule is in the description box below. I'm looking forward to making this quilt with you. We'll get it done just before Halloween. Please like, subscribe, and share with your embroidery friends, and I'll see you next time.